Good evening, everybody. May I offer you a blessing to all of those of you who come here practicing the Dhamma. This is the second formal talk of the week. In the first talk, I gave you an outline of the practice of Ananpanasati. To recap on the practice of Ananpanasati, or mindfulness of breathing, it's a meditation technique for calming the mind, for finding peace of mind through establishing or fixing mindfulness on the breathing, on the in and out breaths. As we practice mindfulness of the breathing, mindfulness with the breathing, it's common that one starts to proliferate, starts to think, get caught into thinking, or doubting, and gets caught into doubt, uncertainty about the practice. When this happens, Ajahn Chah used to say to just contemplate the impermanence of these thoughts and doubts. They're not sure, they're not certain. Or sometimes in the course of the meditation, the mind is very, very agitated, thinking a lot or very confused. Then he suggested to try taking in 3 very deep breaths, fill the lungs up to the full capacity, so there's no room for any more air, and then let all that air out. Do that 3 times just to re-establish mindfulness. Having done that, taken in the 3 deep breaths, let them out, re-establish awareness on the breathing, and simply know the breathing as you breathe in and out. There should be the knowing. There's no need to try and force the breath or do anything unnatural with it. Just let it flow naturally at its own pace. As you continue to practice mindfulness with breathing, different thoughts will come up in the mind, and you'll probably find that you could be partially aware of the breathing and partially aware of the thoughts, but although you might not be able to completely stop thinking, you still have a certain level of calm as some of your mindfulness is with the breathing, so don't worry about it when thoughts come up. As the mind starts to calm down like this, and you have a certain level of mindfulness, but there are still thoughts coming up, it's rather like a chicken in its coop. The chicken moves around, but it's got its limits, the edge of the chicken coop. It's the same with your mindfulness. The thoughts come up, but because there is already a certain level of mindfulness, they don't go too far. The mind doesn't wander too far. If the mind is calm like this, then both the body and the mind will start to feel light and at ease, relaxed. And this makes it, puts the mind in a state that's ready for work or ready to contemplate. Then you can start to contemplate this body, start to contemplate it in terms of the 3 characteristics, to see it as impermanent, as unsatisfactory, and as not self. This is what gives rise to insight. This is vipassana meditation, which uses the 3 characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta, as its object. But if the mind is still too agitated, too confused, then to clearly see these 3 characteristics, to practice vipassana and gain clear insight will be difficult or impossible, rather like a knife that's still blunt, not sharp enough to cut through things. In Buddhism, we talk about 3 kinds or 3 levels of wisdom. There's the wisdom or knowledge that comes through learning from hearing talks or studying books. Second slightly deeper or more profound level is that which comes through one's own contemplation of what one's heard, what one's studied, but contemplating it within one's own mind through the thinking process. But the highest kind of wisdom, the wisdom which one is seeking for in Buddhism, is that wisdom or insight which comes through vipassana, through the quiet mind, contemplating things very clearly, seeing very clearly. The kind of insight or wisdom that arises from the peaceful mind is like, say, when the mind is peaceful, perhaps you reflect on leaves that fall off the trees when they die. When they fall from the trees at first, they're freshly coloured, fresh green coloured, but as they lose their moisture, dry up, they crinkle, become dark brown, golden yellow colour. Just a simple reflection like that with a peaceful mind can give rise to a deep sense of dispassion as one sees the impermanence of all conditioned things. So the practice of meditation to calm the mind as a basis for insight is very important. And it's very good that you're coming to here to practice like this, practice meditation, learning to calm your mind. This is the best way to develop mindfulness and wisdom. It's quite natural that sometimes you'll feel more peaceful, other times you'll feel not very peaceful at all. Don't worry about that, just keep trying to do the practice. Sometimes you might be very diligent and practice meditation every day for 7 days or 10 days, but then stop for another 7 days, 10 days or a period of time. If you do it like that, it'll be difficult to get firm results or good results. If you try and maintain a more continuity with your practice, do it regularly, and contemplate the breath, practice mindfulness of breathing, and just contemplate the impermanence of the body, the impermanence of the breath as the breath goes in and out. If one sees that often, sees it clearly, this is what will give rise to true insight and understanding. Or you could contemplate the 4 elements, the 4 physical elements. Divide the body up into the 4 elements, the earth element, heat element, water element, and the air element. See how these elements come together temporarily and then separate again. The physical body, the physical form that we have here, it's not here all the time in this way. It's always changing, constantly changing, and eventually the body will die, degenerate, break up. One can contemplate this, and this is what will give rise to insight, to wisdom. Or again, to contemplate the forms, the images that we see with the eyes, the sounds that we hear, the tastes that we taste, the smells we receive, the physical sensations we receive with the body, or the thoughts and ideas that come up in the mind. Again, to contemplate them, see the way they arise and pass away, their unsatisfactory nature, the fact that the lack of self in these things. Again, this will give rise to wisdom, to insight. Whatever object the mind receives, if one has mindfulness and sampajanya, or clear comprehension, or all-round knowing, this is what will give rise to wisdom. As one's mind receives whatever the object is with mindfulness and clear comprehension, then the 3 characteristics will be perceived. It will be seen as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and as not self. And this will give rise to a separation. The mind will separate off from whatever that object is, or it will detach from that object. And that's what will give rise to peace of mind. If you're contemplating the mind and its mood, This we call Dhitanupassana, as one of the 4 satipatthanas, one of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Whenever a mood takes hold of the mind, when the mind is greedy or desires something, or if there is aversion, or if there's some form of delusion, one can contemplate this mood, see it as it arises, establishes itself and passes away. And seeing the arising and passing away of the mood, one will detach from it. But if the mind is not yet calm or peaceful with samadhi, then that act of trying to see the mood, the object, in terms of the 3 characteristics will be something that one won't clearly see it. It'll be sanya, or just memory. Panya, or insight, is something different. One sees the 3 characteristics very profoundly, and it affects the mind, makes the mind, one sees very clearly, and the mind becomes peaceful from this. You have to try and give rise to insight as often as possible. To practice meditation, develop as much insight as possible, particularly contemplate the body, see the body very clearly in terms of the 3 characteristics. In practicing meditation, Ajahn Chah often used to advise that you don't have to analyze a lot or think about things a lot, work things out a lot. Just simply bring up these 3 simple reflections of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness and not self. Whatever it is that's coming up in the mind, just use these simple reflections, and the mind can accept that, can believe those 3 things, and that this can bring peace to the mind. So mindfulness is a very important foundation of the practice. Whatever your posture, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, try to maintain mindfulness at all times. As mindfulness becomes more continuous, it's like drops of water running together to form one flow of water, say like drops of water from a tap becoming a stream of water. As you use sati or mindfulness to watch over the mind, you watch out to see whether the mind is getting caught into liking or attraction, and disliking or aversion. Whenever it does get caught into liking or disliking, then you become aware of that, make it known to yourself. If mindfulness and clear comprehension are working together, and insight into the 3 characteristics comes about, then the mind will not attach to moods, won't attach to objects. If it's not caught into liking and disliking, it's in a neutral or balanced state. This is Majjhima Patipatta, or the middle way. And this is the beginning of the path, the noble path. As we're sitting practicing here, all the factors of the Eightfold Noble Path are coming together within each of us: Sila, Samadhi and Panya. As we're practicing, even with the intention to practice, beginning with the intent. In the beginning we have the intention to practice, and we keep the 5 precepts. This is the very beginning of the practice. Keeping the 5 precepts means to compose one's body and speech, and the mind sees the danger or the harm that comes from when one breaks the precepts. If one is keeping the 5 precepts like this, then the mind becomes beautiful in the Dhamma. One becomes the Kalyanachon, or one who is beautiful practicing in the Dhamma. Anyone who is practicing without sila is like someone stuck in the mud. They're not able to really experience the light and brightness that comes through insight. If you try to practice meditation without taking sila into consideration or without keeping the precepts, it's very difficult for any true calm or insight to arise. If one has established one's practice beginning with the sila, with 5 precepts, then calm and insight will arise in its own time, but one has to depend on endurance, patience and endurance as well. The purpose of keeping the precepts is to provide a foundation of, or an initial level of calm for the mind. Once one is established in the sila, then one can practice meditation, but one has to have a certain confidence or faith in the meditation method or meditation object that one is using. Contemplating in the body, one part of the body, or sweeping through the body, parts of the body, or focusing on just one part of the body until the mind becomes firm, calm and firm. That both these methods can give rise to samadhi. Even listening to a Dhamma talk like this, one can make into a practice of samadhi to calm the mind. Ever since the time of the Buddha, Buddhist lay followers have gone to listen to talks, and sometimes in the time of the Buddha, listening to talks very intently with samadhi, with a calm mind, they might actually gain deep insight and realize the Dhamma during the middle of the talk. It's similar to a swamp. If a swamp has a lot of algae or weeds on the top of it, covering over the swamp, the water of the swamp, if you throw a rock into the water, all the weeds and the algae will part, and you'll see the water will clear for a while. Listening to a Dhamma talk is the same. One gets an injection or a burst of wisdom which will give rise to a little bit of light into one's mind, and will give some guidance as to the way to practice in Buddhism. When you listen to a talk, it's important to try and calm the mind so that you can receive anything that comes from the talk. You can practice mindfulness of breathing as you listen. This makes the listening to a talk into a practice. Sometimes even during the course of a talk, you might become very peaceful and no longer actually listen to the words of the talk, but the mind becomes very peaceful and stable in its own meditation. So I encourage everybody to keep putting effort into the practice. Try to set aside all your doubts and uncertainty about it. And if you do have doubts and uncertainty plaguing the mind, then to just keep teaching the mind, as Ajahn Chah said, just keep seeing the impermanence of all your different thoughts and proliferations. Just keep teaching the mind, and sooner or later it will calm down. So you could conclude and say there are 2 main aspects or ways to practice. One is to contemplate the body in terms of the 3 characteristics, to reflect upon it. The other is to just fix your attention on one aspect of the body, one part of the body, without thinking at all. Just concentrate very firmly on that part of the body. Both of these methods are ways to meditate, contemplate, to give rise to peace of mind, calm of mind. And they're both appropriate for people who like to think a lot, practitioners who have a lot of thoughts coming up in the course of practice. If any practitioner doesn't like to contemplate the 3 characteristics, contemplate the body, then to just fix attention on the breath and practice mindfulness of breathing, as I explained earlier. Ajahn Chah used to compare the practice to a knife. There's both the ridge, the flat ridge behind on the top part of the knife, and then there's the sharp edge. There's both samadhi and there's both insight, or calm and insight, samadhi and panya, involved in practice. These two aspects work together. He taught his disciples that when they learnt to calm their mind, then to contemplate the body and see it very clearly in the light of the three characteristics. But he didn't actually give specific teachings to each individual. He would teach generally in this way, and then leave it up to each individual to find his own way in the practice. As you contemplate the body, just try to find what aspect of that contemplation, what aspect of the body might bring calm to the mind, and then work with that. Keep working with it until you calm the mind. Some practitioners they might have a strong defilement coming up, extreme lust, desire, or extreme aversion, anger, contemplating death, Marananusati, might work for them. These different techniques or aspects of the meditation, one has to try them out for oneself, like food. To know which food you like, which food you find delicious, you have to try different foods out for yourself so that you know what the tastes are like. As you practice, if you do get in any peace of mind, get into develop some real calm of mind, that's enough. Just have a peaceful mind and use it to contemplate. You don't have to start doubting what level of samadhi have I gained. Is this jhana? What is this? You don't have to do that. It's like a lot of different kinds of fruit in a basket. You don't have to know the names, the conventional names of all these different kinds of fruit. But if you tried one, you know what it tastes like. That's enough. You know what it's like. Ajahn Chah taught to practice letting go. So to try not to attach to goals, specific goals in the practice, that I must get this level of insight or that level of samadhi, but try to let go of any kind of attachment to these stages or levels of the practice. If you do tend to attach to these, then this will actually increase the amount of confusion and agitation in the mind. It will make you less peaceful. He used to talk about this older monk who came and ordained with him at Wat Marp. He had a lot of faith, and he was really keen to get quick results in the practice and get the highest results. So from the very word go, he was walking and sitting, doing a lot of meditation, putting a lot of effort in. But in a short space of time, he didn't get the results he wanted, so he got very quickly, he lost his inspiration, got depressed and disrobed. But if you practice with this sense of letting go and find a balanced way to practice, then it's much easier, and you just keep going in a more natural way. Practicing with letting go means to try and keep on a central path, not getting caught in liking and disliking. Like you're walking along a straight path, and whatever you meet along that path, whether it's branches or stones or things blocking your way, as you meet each obstacle, just to pick it out and then carry along the path. And if you meet another obstacle, just to pick it up, move it off the path. Or whatever object, sense object or mood the mind experiences, just contemplate it and see if the mind is getting caught into attraction or aversion. See whether the mind is caught into suffering or happiness or unhappiness. And then just to pull back to a place of neutrality in the middle. This is the way for the mind to progress, to move forward in the practice. Even as in the lay life you have jobs, families, things to do, you can, if you practice in this way, you can practice in the lay life. Because to incorporate the Dhamma into your life is as important as to have breath for the physical body. If you reflect on it, the Dhamma means nature, or that which is natural. If you think about it, when we all started off in life, we were just a small little blob of elements in our mother's stomach, in her womb. As that small little blob gradually grew, taking in more food substances and moisture, nutriment, mixing the elements, the four elements mixing together, and the body grew, then a sense of attachment formed for that body. We started to take it as an us, as a me, as an I. What that means is that attaching to that form, it means that we have to live with old age, sickness and death as well, but we never see that. You see that what gets old, dies, is actually just these four elements. If you were to contemplate the simple truth of it, to sit meditation, make the mind calm and just contemplate this simple truth every day, little by little, then you'll see very profoundly the truth that the Buddha was teaching about impermanence, the impermanence of the body and mind. If you're able to see this clearly in your mind just once in your whole life, then you could say that you're somebody who's been born with wisdom. Seeing clearly, seeing the truth clearly, contemplating the body clearly, to let go of attachment for the body. Once you view this form in the correct way, once you let go of your attachment, then you let go of what they call sakkaya or personality view. I think that this body, this form, is not me, it's not I, it's something that is not self. And that would lead to an end to any kind of doubt or uncertainty about the Buddha Dhamma Sangha as well. You'd let go of Sila or attachment to wrong ways of practice which don't lead to seeing the Dhamma. The mind that sees like this, has insight like this, is a mind that is wholesome, but there is no one there who is the owner of the mind. There's no sense of self involved. The Buddha Dhamma Sangha will come into that mind. So to come and practice Dhamma here is perhaps the most useful thing you can do with your time, maybe. So I encourage you all to be diligent and keep practicing as regularly and as consistently as you can, and you should all get some good results from it. So I think I've given enough time, talked enough for the moment. After this, we can have a discussion if anybody's interested. Anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.